You know that strange feeling you sometimes get without knowing why? As if someone, somewhere, is thinking of you. At the same time, you're thinking of them. As if Allah has already placed an answer in your heart, but you can't decipher it. What if this person who keeps coming back to you isn't just a memory? What if it's a divine reminder? What if Allah has already spoken to you about them, and you simply haven't been able to hear? You think it's over, but you're watching this video. Why now? Why this title? It's no coincidence. Perhaps a call is coming, and not just a phone call, but a call from destiny. Do you want to understand what you're feeling? Stay until the end, because what you're about to hear could change your perception, and perhaps your future. You felt it, didn't you? There's something you've never really been able to name. A flutter, a shiver, a memory that returns for no apparent reason, not an ordinary memory. A face, a voice, a precise sensation, as if your heart has retained a memory that your mind has nevertheless tried to forget. And you stop, you close your eyes, and you ask yourself, why now? Why again? Why her? Why him? But no clear answer comes. Only this constant feeling, this gentle weight on your chest, like a breath, like a breeze that only your heart feels. You didn't cause it. You didn't even think about it anymore. But this person comes back again, sometimes in a dream, sometimes in broad daylight, sometimes at the very moment you're talking to Allah, and you begin to doubt yourself. Am I losing my mind? Am I deluding myself? Is it haram to feel this way? But listen to me. You're not crazy. This isn't a whim of your ego. It's a spiritual echo, an invisible wave that Allah sends you, not to disturb you, but to question you, to wake you up. Because sometimes Allah doesn't answer with words. He answers with an inner shock, a silent presence that settles in your soul, making you think for no logical reason. Do you think you've forgotten it? But your soul has never erased it. Because there are bonds that Allah has created beyond what you can control. And even when you've tried to move on, to turn the page, to bury everything, this presence returns, discreet but persistent, not like a destructive obsession, but like a faint light that refuses to go out. Why? Because perhaps Allah has already spoken to you, not in a human language, but in that language that only sincere hearts can feel. You felt it at night, in the depths of solitude. You felt it in a look, in a strange coincidence, in a prayer you no longer even dared to pray. You felt it in that sudden calm when everything was going wrong, and thinking of that person eased your pain. You thought you had found peace without them, but it's not attachment, it's gratitude. As if your heart had already known that this person had a role, a place, a meeting planned, in a time that only you can control. What if what you feel wasn't there to torture you, but to guide you? What if this inner reminder wasn't a test, but an indication? What if this connection, so discreet, so profound, was precisely the way Allah tells you, I have already given you a sign, but you haven't understood it yet? Are you waiting for a clear answer? Do you want Allah to write a message for you in the sky? But He has already written it within you, in your heart, in your chest, in this precise moment when you hear these words and your soul begins to shiver. Do you think this is just a video that you're here by chance? You were meant to hear it, because what you feel is not ordinary. It's a reminder from above, a gentle jolt, but a sacred one. And if you close your eyes now, if you remain silent for a few seconds, perhaps you will hear it again. Not a voice, not a word, but a calm, a strange certainty, an invisible whisper. And this whisper tells you there is something to understand, Don't ignore it.
2. What if I told you her story before it happened? He's there, in a corner of her life, silent but not insensitive. He tries to appear strong, busy, focused, but in truth, he's thinking about it, her. Not all the time, no, but often enough for it to leave a mark on him. Enough so that some days his heart sinks for no reason. She lives too. On the other side of a screen, a memory, a frozen moment. She's moving forward, or at least that's what she tells everyone. But there's this moment, every night, when her heart turns for a split second, and she wonders, does he also think of me the way I think of him? They no longer speak. The thread has been cut, or rather, it's been suspended. Because sometimes life puts on hold what is not yet ripe, not to break, but to better prepare, not to distance, but to purify. There is something sacred in their silence. It is not an end. It is a celestial delay. Because in the heavens, their story already has a name. It is not written in text messages. It is woven into invocations that one makes without the other knowing. It advances in the unsaid, in glances toward the sky, in the Ya Allah whispered into the pillow, when no one is looking. And as you listen to these words, you must understand that there may be at this very moment someone who is thinking of you with modesty, not to possess you, but because deep down they feel that Allah has already spoken of you, not with a voice, not with visible signs like in movies, but with coincidences so precise they make you doubt reality. She, for example, sees your first name again, everywhere, on posters, in songs, on license plates, in casual conversations. She thinks it's ridiculous, but deep down, each appearance makes her breathe differently. He came across this video, not because he was looking for you, but because he was searching for meaning. And without knowing it, it's your memory that has been awakened. A friend talks about you without realizing it. A familiar scent fills the air. A place you shared together appears in her day like a flash from the past. But it's not the past. It's a future in disguise. Because what you've experienced, or what you haven't yet experienced, perhaps it's a story that destiny hasn't yet finished writing. And Allah, in His wisdom, never rushes a union He wants to be stable. So He creates silences, detours, moments of distance not to separate you, but to help you grow. And while you doubt, while you tell yourself it's over, someone out there is holding back from writing this message, not out of pride, but because they're waiting for a sign. One last one. And that sign, perhaps, is this video. Perhaps while you breathe these words, their finger trembles above your number. They hesitate, they erase, they rewrite, they sigh, but they think about it. Perhaps she, for her part, is saying a special prayer, and in her supplication, your name appeared. Not as a whim, but as a reassurance. Sacred stories aren't noisy. They don't impose themselves, they recognize each other, and they always find each other at the exact time set by the one who knows. So while you watch this video, don't take this moment lightly, for you don't know what's moving behind the veil of the invisible. You don't know if this phone won't vibrate soon. You don't know if this message isn't being written, letter by letter, by a hand guided, not by desire, but by faith. And if you knew everything that happens behind the scenes, in heaven, to bring two souls back to their divine time, you would no longer doubt. You would stand ready. 3. What if Allah has already given you the answer? You say you're waiting for a sign, but are you really sure you haven't already received several? Or are you unconsciously choosing to see only what reassures you, forgetting what challenges you? Why does this person always come back to your mind right after a sincere prayer? Why does their name appear on days when you ask Allah for guidance? Why does this memory, which you thought was extinguished, sometimes appear like a soft light? Just when you feel lost? You think they're just thoughts, coincidences, remnants of undigested emotions. But ask yourself this question: do all thoughts create this kind of peace? Why does this one, in particular, make you breathe more deeply? Why does it push you to return to God instead of turning away? What if this person wasn't a distraction, but a direction? What if what you feel wasn't an emotional illusion, but a spiritual permission to look where Allah wants you to look? You want answers, but you sometimes reject the forms they take. You want a heavenly voice, a clear dream, an obvious statement. But Allah, in His wisdom, doesn't always use the obvious. He likes to speak to those who listen with their hearts, not with their ears. So, what if it's already there? What if the sensation you get when you make dhikr and her image crosses your mind like a breeze was precisely an answer disguised as silence? What if the peace you feel, that unique peace that fills you when you think of her, even in moments of doubt, was a green light from above? But you want confirmation, you say. You want the heavens to open, for doubts to disappear, for the voice to tell you, this is the person. But haven't you already heard this voice? In your own heart? In that strange conviction you can't explain? That idea that won't leave you even after you've tried to crush it? You think it's you who's thinking about this person. But isn't it Allah who puts it before your eyes again and again, so that you understand what your mind refuses to accept? What if Allah has already spoken to you, but you're still too attached to logic to hear what transcends logic? You say you want signs, but when you receive them, you describe them as emotions, nostalgia, confusion, and yet you don't have this kind of confusion with others. You don't feel this depth with just anyone. You didn't have to force yourself to feel this. You just recognized it, and that's the secret. Souls recognize what the intellect tries to unpack. But sacred love can't be demonstrated. It reveals itself, and you know it. You feel it in your breath. You feel it in your prayers. You find it in the long silences where only the memory of them soothes you. So ask yourself the only real question that matters. Is it really you who is thinking of this person? Or is it Allah who is making you think of them? What if the answer isn't yet coming, but already given, just wrapped in a form you haven't yet been able to recognize? Look around you. How many times have you seen signs, but ignored them for fear of making a mistake? And how many times has Allah shown you something clear, but you waited, thinking it wasn't enough? What if what you feel, this sudden flutter, this discreet warmth, this conviction without reason, was the true language of your soul? Because divine messages don't always arrive in thunderous bursts. Sometimes they come in a whisper, in a gentle repetition, in a thought that recurs, until you finally dare to take it seriously. And maybe what you feel right now isn't a random emotion. Perhaps it's a sacred response, offered in calm, but meant to change your life. 4. The wave that always returns to its shore. There are people who never really leave, even when you close the door, even when you block calls, change cities, change skin. They slide, they fade, they become silent, but they don't disappear. They come back, not physically, not right away, but in your dreams, in your breath, in that strange sensation you can't name. Some souls are like the sea. They withdraw, they recede. You think they're leaving, but it's only to come back better. And one day, without warning, a wave brushes against your heart,
And you recognize that current. You remember. You swore it was over. You had buried this story in sacred silence. But then, in the middle of prayer, his name resurfaces, not as a memory, but as a presence. You didn't invoke it. You didn't seek it out. But Allah, He reminded you of this bond you thought you had erased. And do you know why? Because there are bonds that are not formed by desire, but by divine wisdom. Bonds that are not dependent on time, but anchored in a celestial scripture. It's like a warm wind in the middle of a freezing winter. You don't know where it comes from, but you know it's not there by chance. It takes something with it, or brings back what you thought was lost. You made an effort. You changed, grew, prayed. You distanced yourself because you believed it was the best thing to do. And maybe it was. Because sometimes Allah separates two souls to raise them separately, but He brings them back at the right moment, the one you could never have chosen. So don't be surprised if, in the coming days, a presence returns unannounced. Don't be surprised if this person crosses your mind without invitation. It's not a whim of the heart. It's a silent reminder of what has been written, but not yet experienced. Allah doesn't always send you what you want, when you want it, but He sends you what is right at the exact moment your soul is ready to receive it. He doesn't consult your calendar. He doesn't ask your mind's permission. When He decides that a bond must be revived, He breaks the laws of time. He bends space. He transforms what you thought was past into a future that only needed to mature. And you feel this vibration, this inner stirring. You don't know if you should believe it. You don't know if you should open the door or leave it closed a little longer. But you know, it's not trivial, because all around you the signs are starting to bloom again. A date, a first name, a message you don't dare send, a dream so clear that you wake up with tears in your eyes. You think you've turned the page, but Allah has kept the book open. And this person, maybe it wasn't the right time. Maybe they weren't ready. Maybe neither are you. But the wind is changing. And when Allah decides it's time, the sea itself returns to caress the shores it had left. So listen, not with your ears, with your heart. Because this sudden flutter, this vague sensation, this deep intuition, perhaps it's the announcement of a return. Not an emotional return, but an orderly return. Directed, written, protected, and maybe you won't be the one to make the first move. Maybe it will be her or him. Maybe a simple message will wake you up. A voice you thought had disappeared will break the silence, not to revive a pain, but to finalize a divine promise. And you won't have to force anything, nothing to explain, because everything will have a taste of something already planned.
5. The voice your soul recognizes. You felt it before you even understood it. There was this person, not necessarily impressive, not necessarily perfect, but different. There was a peace in her presence you couldn't explain, a peace you didn't feel anywhere else. Not a thrill of excitement, not a superficial attraction. Number A kind of calm, a peace, as if your soul had understood something, long before you did. You thought it was a simple connection, but why then did the memory of her make you a better person? Why, thinking of her, did you want to pray more sincerely? Why was it that, when you were on the verge of losing your way, her name reminded you of who you wanted to become? There are people who come and shake your heart, and there are others who silently heal it. And this person, maybe they didn't do anything extraordinary. Maybe they never knew the effect they had on you, but their existence simply did you good, not because they gave to you, but because they awakened you. They reminded you that you could love differently, without possessiveness, without noise, without expecting to be loved in return, but just with sincerity, with the hope that perhaps Allah had placed their name somewhere in your destiny. There is a voice your soul recognizes. It doesn't pass through the ears. It doesn't need to be spoken. It doesn't even need words. It's an inner echo, as if a forgotten part of you had awakened upon meeting this soul. And in your deepest prayers, you weren't praying for this person. You were praying in their memory, as if their invisible presence made your invocation more real. You weren't looking for love. You were looking for alignment, something that would bring you back to yourself, but also to Allah. And this person brought you back to the best version of yourself, without words, without control, just by their way of being. And even today, you don't really dare speak to them, or maybe you've lost touch, but they're there, always there, in a sacred corner of your memory, and sometimes in that void that nothing else fills, not like an addiction, not like a lack, but like a suspended promise, an energy that still floats between two destinies that have not yet joined. Because sometimes Allah connects two souls, but doesn't give them the green light right away. He lets them grow. He lets them make mistakes. He lets them drift apart, only to return better. He doesn't shout the answer. He whispers it. He slips a name into your chest, a first name in your dream, a silhouette in your silence. And if you pay close enough attention, you notice that this first name makes you calm, not feverish. This memory purifies you. It doesn't lead you astray. Because there are souls your heart recognizes, not because they belong to you, but because they were already there, somewhere in your fitrah. You don't need to convince. You don't need to run. This bond, it is woven in the invisible. And if you listen carefully, not outside, but inside, you will hear that voice, not a human voice, but a sensation, a divine vibration. You will know that it is not a simple thought. It is guidance, a reminder, a mercy. And it may be that what you are waiting for is already on its way. It may be that the call you dread is ready to sound, but not to fill a void, not to flatter your ego, to bring you back to Allah, to your heart, and to the other soul that yours recognizes even in silence. If you've stayed this far, it's not because you're bored. It's because something inside you has resonated, because you deeply feel that there is a silent word from Allah resonating within you. You're not crazy, you're not alone, you are guided. So listen more carefully, observe the signs, and when that message arrives, when that call comes, in whatever form it takes, remember that you are already warned. Subscribe if you feel this mysterious connection within you. Leave a comment if someone came to mind during this video. And share this light with someone who is also waiting for an answer without knowing it. Allah speaks, but sometimes it's your silence that must listen.